Jack Nicklaus doesn't speak often, but when he does, everyone stops and listens. This week, he spoke, and what he said has the entire golf world on edge. The 86-year-old legend sat in front of reporters at Muirfield Village. The Memorial Tournament was just days away. He was asked about the PGA Tour's new schedule plans, and his answer wasn't just honest. It was a warning. "I'm not in favor of this," he said. "Not in favor." Let that sink in. The PGA Tour wants to compress its season into just 6 months by 2028. Fewer weeks, fewer events, more signature tournaments squeezed into a shorter window. The man leading this change is Brian Rolapp, the new CEO brought in from the NFL. And Nicklaus? He hadn't even spoken to him yet. That's the part that made this story so tense. The most respected voice in golf history was publicly opposing the biggest structural change the tour has ever seen, and he hadn't even sat down with the man driving it. He said something else that should worry every golf fan. He described a tournament he cares about, sandwiched between bigger events, and said it has no chance. No chance. That's not just a complaint, that's a prediction. And if Jack Nicklaus is predicting trouble for traditional tournaments, what does that mean for the PGA Tour's future? We're going to break all of this down for you today. Who Nicklaus is calling out, why he's speaking up now, what happened when he finally met with Rolapp face-to-face, and most importantly, what this means for the game we love. But first, I want to know what you think. Do you agree with Nicklaus, or is the PGA Tour right to modernize? Drop your take in the comments, and if you care about real golf conversations, not just highlights and leaderboards, hit that subscribe button. We're building a community of fans who actually pay attention, because what's coming next could change the PGA Tour forever. Now let's get specific about what actually has Jack Nicklaus so concerned. Because he didn't just say, "I'm not in favor." He pointed directly at something real, something happening right now on the PGA Tour calendar. He used one tournament as an example, Cognizant Classic, a tournament with decades of history in Florida, a tournament connected to his own foundation. And he said it's being squeezed out. Here's what he meant. Look at the current schedule. Pebble Beach, then LA, then Cognizant, then Bay Hill, then the Players' Championship. 5 big tournaments crammed into just a few weeks. What happens to the one in the middle? It gets buried. Top players can't play all 5. They have to choose. And when they choose, they skip the middle ones, the ones with history, the ones real golf fans actually love. Nicklaus said it bluntly. It has no chance. Think about that word, no chance. A tournament that's been on the schedule for decades, suddenly invisible. Not because fans stopped caring, because the structure made it impossible. This is where Brian Rolapp comes in. He's the new CEO. He came from the NFL, and his plan is to shrink the season even more. By 2028, the PGA Tour season could be just 6 months long. Only the biggest events make the cut. Everything else is at risk. And here's the part that should worry every golf fan. Rolapp's not hiding this. He's proud of it. He said he wants the tour to be more efficient, more like a league, less like a tour. But golf is not the NFL. It never was. It's built on tradition, on courses that have hosted for 50 years, on tournaments that families have attended for generations. And now, one man from the NFL is rethinking all of it. Nicklaus sees where this is heading. He's been playing and building this sport for over 60 years. He knows that when you compress everything into a short window, the small events die. The medium events suffer. And the big events? They get bigger, but they lose their soul. He's not just protecting his own tournament. He's warning everyone. He said something else that's important. He said, "I don't think it's a problem yet, but I think it will be if we don't address it." That's the voice of experience. He's seen cycles before. He's seen changes that looked smart at first and then hurt the game for decades. So what happens when a CEO with an NFL mindset meets a legend who built half the tournaments on the schedule? That meeting happened, and it wasn't comfortable. We'll get to what was said behind those closed doors in just a moment, but first you need to understand what's really at stake here. This isn't about one man's opinion. This is about the future shape of professional golf, and right now, nobody knows how it ends. But what exactly is Rolapp trying to do? Let's look at the numbers. Right now, the PGA Tour has about 34 weeks of events. That's almost 8 months of golf. Rolapp wants to cut that down to around 20 events total, including the majors and the playoffs. 20 events. That's it. And here's the bigger change. He wants to create a two-track system. Think of it like a first division and a second division. The top players compete in the championship series. The rest play in the challenger series. And there's promotion and relegation between them. Play well, you move up. Play badly, you drop down. It sounds like European soccer. It sounds like the NFL. But does it sound like golf? For Nicklaus, the answer is clear. No. He told reporters, "I hate to see tournaments bunched too much together, with too many big tournaments too close together." That's a problem, I think, and I think that's going to be a problem for the tour in the future. Notice he didn't say, "I disagree." He said, "I hate." That's personal. That's emotional. That's a man who built his life around this sport, watching it get taken apart. And he's not alone in his concerns. Players have made it clear they don't want to play more than 3 weeks in a row. Justin Thomas has called it brutally tough. When you compress the schedule, you force players into impossible choices. Skip a traditional event to rest for a major, or play it and risk burnout. Either way, somebody loses. And that's exactly what Nicklaus is warning about. The players lose. The tournaments lose. The fans lose. But Rolapp sees it differently. He sees a sport that needs to compete with the NFL, the NBA, the big leagues. He sees a product that needs to be more television-friendly, more predictable, more efficient. That's the fundamental clash. One man sees golf as a sport. The other sees it as a product. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Nicklaus didn't just criticize the schedule and walk away. He did something that caught everyone's attention. He said he wanted to meet with Rolapp, face to face. "I really haven't had a conversation. I want to sit down with Brian and Jay and have that conversation," he said. And he didn't leave it vague. He told everyone when it would happen. Wednesday, at Muirfield Village, during the Memorial Tournament. That's not a casual request. That's a public summons. Think about the power dynamic here. Nicklaus is 86 years old. He's not on the policy board. He doesn't have a vote. He's not officially involved in the tour's decision-making anymore. But he's Jack Nicklaus. When he asks for a meeting, you show up. And Rolapp did show up. Along with Commissioner Jay Monahan, they came to Muirfield Village on Wednesday. The media called it a difficult conversation before it even happened. One outlet predicted that Rolapp and Nicklaus disagree on the PGA Tour's future. So what was said behind those doors? We don't know all of it. The meeting was private. No cameras, no recording. But here's what we do know. After the meeting, Nicklaus was asked about it. His response? He declined to comment on the proposed new schedule. That silence is telling. A man who spoke so openly on Tuesday suddenly had nothing to say on Wednesday. Either they reached some kind of understanding, or the disagreement was so deep that Nicklaus decided not to escalate it publicly. But here's what we also know. Rolapp comes from the NFL. When he was announced as CEO, he said something that probably didn't sit well with Nicklaus. He said he wouldn't be overly bound by golf's traditions, as he sought the best path forward. For a traditionalist like Nicklaus, those words are like a red flag. And Dan Rappaport, a golf analyst, put it perfectly. He said, "It's got to be hard for Brian Rolapp, a guy who comes from outside of golf, to hear Jack Nicklaus say this stuff." Then he added something even more revealing. He's going to have to explain that the PGA Tour as you knew it is not what the PGA Tour of tomorrow is going to look like. That's the real conflict. Rolapp isn't tweaking the schedule, he's reimagining the entire sport. And Nicklaus represents everything that's being left behind. But here's the thing about Jack Nicklaus. He's not just any former player. He's one of the founders of the modern PGA Tour. Back in the 1960s, he and Arnold Palmer and others fought to give players more control over their own careers. They built the structure that made the tour what it is today. So when Nicklaus speaks, he's not just offering an opinion, he's speaking as someone who helped build the house that's now being remodeled. And he sees the cracks. He used the Cognizant Classic as an example. But the problem is bigger than one tournament. It's about what happens when you pack everything into a small window. He said, "The other tournaments also say, you know, I got 4 out of 5. It's hard for guys to play that." Translation: when you have 5 big events in 5 weeks, players have to pick and choose. They can't play all of them. So the middle events lose. The smaller markets lose. The tournaments with history lose. And once those tournaments lose their fields, they lose their sponsors. Once they lose their sponsors, they lose their place on the schedule. Once they lose their place on the schedule, they disappear. That's not speculation. That's what Nicklaus is warning about. He said, I could play a couple weeks in a row, maybe 3 weeks in a row, but I needed some time off to be able to recharge the batteries, and I think everybody needs to recharge their batteries. He's not just talking about himself. He's talking about every player on tour. He's saying, you can't ask these guys to go full throttle for months on end. It's not sustainable, it's not healthy, and it's not good for the sport. So where does that leave us? Rolapp's plan is moving forward. The 2028 changes are coming. The 2-track system, the compressed schedule, the Championship Series and the Challenger Series. It's happening. But Nicklaus has planted a flag. He's said publicly, in front of cameras, in front of reporters, in front of the entire golf world, that he doesn't agree with this direction. And he's done something else. He's made it clear that he expects to be heard. He demanded that meeting. He got it. And he's not backing down. Rappaport said something else worth remembering. He said Nicklaus is not invested in the 15 or 20-year window the way Rolapp is. And that's the key difference. Rolapp is thinking about 2040. He's thinking about TV deals and global markets and competing with other sports. He's thinking about the product. Nicklaus is thinking about the game, the one he's loved for over 60 years, the one he helped build, the one he wants to leave intact for the next generation. He's not against change. He's against change that destroys what makes golf special. I don't think it's a problem yet, he said, but I think it will be if we don't address it. That's the warning. That's why he spoke up. That's why he asked for that meeting. The meeting happened. Nicklaus and Rolapp sat down face-to-face at Muirfield Village, behind closed doors. No cameras, no recording. Afterward, Nicklaus had nothing to say about the proposed schedule. Silence. But sometimes silence says more than words. What did they agree on? What did they disagree on? Did Rolapp listen? Did Nicklaus change his mind? We don't know. Not yet. But here's what we do know. The 2028 changes are still coming. Rolapp is still the CEO, and Nicklaus is still the most respected voice in golf. One thing is certain. When Jack Nicklaus asks for a face-to-face meeting, the entire golf world pays attention. And what happens next will determine the future of the PGA Tour. Here's what I think. Nicklaus is right to be worried. When you compress a season that's been built over decades into just a few months, something gets lost. And that something is the soul of the game. But I also understand why Rolapp is pushing for change. The world has changed. Sports have changed. Golf needs to evolve to survive. The question is, can you evolve without losing what made you great? That's the question Nicklaus is asking. And that's the question Rolapp has to answer. What do you think? Is Nicklaus right to push back? Or is Rolapp's plan exactly what the PGA Tour needs? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. And if you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of fan we built this channel for. Hit that subscribe button. We're building something real here. Real conversations. Real analysis. No fluff. Because golf deserves better than highlights and hot takes. It deserves fans who actually care about where this game is heading. We'll see you in the next one.